Hello, everyone. Welcome to African Tales, your ultimate destination for timeless African stories passed down through generations. From mystical folklore and powerful legends to moral parables and heroic journeys, our animated and narrated tales bring the rich oral traditions of Africa to life. Whether you're here for bedtime stories, cultural education, or simply love captivating storytelling, African Tales is where ancient wisdom meets modern entertainment. Subscribe and explore the heart of Africa. Today we're diving into a story where a billionaire acts as poor to test his family, but his wife's reaction will bring you to tears. Before beginning, please hit the subscribe button so that you never miss out on new videos. Without further ado, let's get started. In a bustling Nigerian city where concrete kissed the skies and wealth flowed like the Lagos traffic, chaotic but constant, lived a man named Chief Durojaye. To the world, he was more than a man. He was a symbol, the kind of figure whose name made men sit straighter and women lower their voices in awe. Durojaye was not born with a silver spoon, nor did he inherit a legacy. His was the type of story whispered to young boys in village schools to inspire greatness. Born into a mud-walled hut in the heart of a small Yoruba village, his first cradle was a raffia mat on red soil. His earliest toys? Pebbles, sticks, and imagination. As a child, he'd rise with the roosters and run errands for his mother, fetching water from the stream, hawking akara in the village square, and reading tattered books beneath oil lamps. His mother, Mama Ronke, often told him, "Omomi, wealth is not in your pocket, it's in your heart. Fill your heart first, and your hands will follow." Durojaye never forgot. He excelled in school, earning the admiration of his village, and eventually a government scholarship that sent him to study abroad in the UK. While his peers reveled in campus parties and Western freedoms, Durojaye worked 3 jobs and spent nights building computer models for dreams only he could see. By the time he returned to Nigeria, he was a man with purpose and a folder full of ideas. He launched a small logistics company out of a one-room office. From there, he branched into real estate, then oil, and eventually technology. Brick by brick, he built what would become Durotech Holdings, a titan of Nigerian enterprise. Oil, rigs, tech campuses, cargo ships, all bore the stamp of his grit. His name became synonymous with integrity, philanthropy, and relentless ambition. Newspapers called him the people's billionaire, but in his own home, he was simply Baba. And then came Amara. She arrived like a monsoon, sophisticated, educated, and from a lineage that dripped with legacy. Her father was a former ambassador, her mother a university dean. They met at a gala for industrial innovators in Abuja, where Durojaye was being honored. Amara was unlike any woman he had met, poised yet playful, intelligent, with a sense of humor that made him forget he was one of the richest men in Africa. Within 6 months, they were married in what the media called the wedding of the decade. Celebrities, royalty, and business moguls filled the cathedral. Lagos stood still. Amara bore him 3 children. Tunde, the first son, raised to lead but too eager to inherit. Kemi, stylish, glamorous, and addicted to public validation. Dele, the youngest, soft-hearted but aimless, living in the shadows of family wealth. Their mansion in Ikoyi was a fortress of opulence. 10 bedrooms, a helipad, indoor cinema, and staff of 30. But behind the marble floors and Swarovski chandeliers, Durojaye often walked alone. He gave his family everything: designer clothes, trips to Dubai, Ivy League education. But something gnawed at him. The laughter at dinner was hollow. The I love yous felt timed. On his birthdays, their gifts were expensive but impersonal. They praised his wealth, not his wisdom. Still, he hoped. It was on a quiet Thursday evening, the kind when the Lagos sky is bruised with the colors of impending rain, that Durojaye heard what would shatter him forever. He had returned early from a surprise visit to one of his schools in Ibadan. Still in his agbada, briefcase in hand, he walked into his mansion's corridor and paused near the living room. The voices of his family floated through the air, unaware of his silent approach. "Daddy's holding on to the company like he wants to take it to the grave," Tunde grumbled. "He won't even let me use the vacation house in Marbella," Kemi complained. "What's the point of being rich if we can't enjoy it?" Amara's voice followed, sharp like a broken bottle. "He's stuck in the past, always talking about hard work and humility. This is a new generation. What's the point of wealth if it controls you?" Then a laugh. Not joyous, but mocking. "If he dropped dead tomorrow," Tunde said, "I'd pop champagne. Let's be honest." A silence fell. Then Amara added, almost too casually, "Maybe it's time we prepare for that, Durojaye's heart clenched. His hand gripped the marble column. The family he had fed, educated, and clothed with his blood and sweat, plotting, mocking, betraying. He didn't enter the room. He simply turned and walked back out into the storm now falling over Lagos. That night, he didn't sleep. He paced the floor of his private study, the one room no one dared enter without permission. Under the gaze of ancestral portraits and shelves, of books about business and philosophy, he crafted a plan, not of vengeance but revelation. "What if I took everything away?" he whispered to himself. "What if they believed it was all gone? Would they still love me? Would they stand by me? And so, the test was born. 2 days later, Durojaye called a secret meeting with his most trusted legal advisor and longtime friend, Pa Olumide. They met at the back of an orphanage Durojaye had funded for years, away from eyes and ears. "I want to transfer 90% of my assets to a private trust under your name," Durojaye said. "Make it appear, on paper, that I'm bankrupt. Let the media know. Freeze the accounts, the properties, everything." Pa Olumide blinked. "Are you sure? This will shake everything. The stock market." "Let it shake," Durojaye said coldly. "The truth must rise through the rubble." A week later, the headline screamed, "Billionaire Chief Durojaye declared insolvent. Durotech collapses amid hidden debts." TV channels ran wild with speculation. Social media buzzed. In the family mansion, chaos reigned. "What do you mean it's all gone?" Amara shrieked at the family accountant. The cars were recalled. The staff were let go. Credit cards stopped working. Properties were frozen. In the middle of it all, Durojaye vanished. Durojaye didn't fly out of the country. He went deeper into the veins of Lagos that people like Amara and the children had never seen. Disguised in worn clothes, his hair and beard grown and gray, he rented a tiny one-room apartment in Mushin under the name Baba Kunle. He paid a local makeup artist, someone he had sponsored through beauty school years ago, to give him a permanent aged look. Wrinkles etched deeper, scars added. Even his voice was changed, hoarse, slower, weary. And then, one morning, Baba Kunle walked up to the gate of his former mansion. The security guard, Kunle Jr., a man Durojaye himself had hired, didn't recognize him. "Baba, what do you want?" the guard said gruffly. "I'm looking for work," he said, voice trembling. "Even as a cleaner or gatekeeper. I used to know the man who lived here." Kunle Jr. snorted. "Well, he doesn't live here anymore. This house is empty most days. Families in shambles. Please," Baba Kunle pleaded. "Let me sweep the front yard. Anything. Just food and a place to lay my head." With a shrug, Kunle let him through. "Fine. If they see you and complain, it's not on me." Days turned into weeks. Baba Kunle swept floors, tended the garden, and cleaned the hallways he once walked in princely robes. He slept in the servant quarters, the same room his own bodyguard once used. No one recognized him. Kemi walked past him without a glance, clutching her designer purse like it held her identity. Tunde once threw a glass in his direction for accidentally bumping into him while cleaning the hallway. Amara? She was the worst. She called him names: old beggar, filthy intruder. One afternoon, she even demanded he be fired, but the staff shortage kept him on. Only one person noticed Baba Kunle's eyes, those sharp, thoughtful eyes hidden beneath age and dust: Ifeoma. A housemaid barely 20, Ifeoma was from the east, gentle in nature but strong from suffering. She had lost her parents in a village fire and had been working since she was 16. While others mocked or ignored Baba Kunle, Ifeoma greeted him every morning. One evening, when she found him coughing violently in the yard, she brought him warm pepper soup from the kitchen. "Eat this, Baba. You're shivering," she said, softly. He looked at her, really looked, and in that moment, Durojaye felt something he hadn't felt in years: warmth. The days that followed were a strange blend of pain and clarity for Baba Kunle, once Chief Durojaye. As he swept the same marbled halls he once strutted down with pride, he watched his family through the veil of poverty. No longer their patriarch, just a ragged old man in the background. And in those silent shadows, the truth revealed itself louder than ever. Amara grew colder by the day. The woman who once praised him in public speeches now carried herself with a bitterness that dripped from her every word. "Why is that old man still here?" she shouted one morning after tripping on a mop he'd left by the stairs. "I told you I don't want his kind around me. He smells like poverty. I swear if I see him near my bedroom wing again, I'll call the police." She didn't recognize his eyes, his hands, his gait. Love had never truly lived in her heart. It had been a tenant of convenience, paid in checks and shares. Tunde had taken to drinking, blaming everyone but himself for the collapse of their fortune. One afternoon, Baba Kunle was refilling the water jugs in the dining room when Tunde stormed in. "Old fool," Tunde barked. "Don't touch that. You'll infect the whole house. You're probably the reason this family fell to pieces." He shoved him hard, sending the jug crashing to the floor. Baba Kunle fell, pain shooting through his hip, but he said nothing. He stared at his son, his firstborn, and saw only entitlement. This was not the boy who used to climb into his bed during thunderstorms. This was a stranger raised by money, not morals. Kemi was no better. She spent hours on social media, begging her online followers to support her during these trying times, while still ordering imported wigs and hiding designer handbags. "Man," she said one evening, catching him polishing silverware, "go fetch my shoes from the car. Be quick, I'm late for a shoot." Baba Kunle nodded slowly and limped to the driveway, her keys dangling from his trembling hands. She didn't say thank you, didn't even look at him. He was invisible. But then, there was Ifeoma. If she noticed the way Baba Kunle watched the family, she said nothing. If she sensed the grief behind his eyes, she never pressed. But every morning, she left a small bowl of ogi and a kara for him on the back porch. Every evening, she asked if he'd eaten. "You remind me of my grandfather," she said one day, placing a small blanket over his frail shoulders. "He used to say you can't measure a man's worth by the coins in his pocket, but by the kindness he shows in hunger." She didn't know she was feeding the very man who signed her employment papers, who made sure her salary was doubled in secret each month, who built the orphanage where she once lived as a child. But she gave. Freely. Not because he had money, because he had none. Weeks turned into months, and Baba Kunle endured every indignity. He scrubbed toilets his sons once used. He fetched water for a daughter who now pretended she never knew his name. He watched Amara flirt with a family friend, pretending to still be wealthy. And all the while, he wrote. In the quiet of the servant quarters, he kept a journal. Every kindness noted, every cruelty recorded, and Ifeoma's name was written in gold. One night, as the Harmattan winds swept through the compound, Baba Kunle fell ill. Violently ill, fevered, shivering, barely able to move. He knocked weakly on the main house door. Amara opened it, looked down at him and said, Don't die on the steps. You'll stain the marble. She slammed the door in his face. Ifeoma's sacrifice. It was Ifeoma who found him, lying curled like a wounded dog under a tree behind the kitchen. "Baba?" she gasped, kneeling beside him. "You're burning up." She didn't hesitate. She wrapped him in her shawl and half carried, half dragged him to her tiny room behind the house. She nursed him through the night, wiping sweat from his brow, whispering prayers in Igbo and Yoruba alike. The next morning, she left before sunrise to buy medicine with the little money she had saved to send her younger brother to school. She came back soaked in rain, holding a small bag of pills and a tin of balm. "Don't leave yet," she whispered, feeding him spoonfuls of broth. "Don't go, please." And for the first time in weeks, Durojaye wept. Not because of the pain, but because in a house he built with his fortune, only the poor girl who had nothing gave him everything. The winds of change began to stir as Baba Kunle's strength slowly returned. Thanks to Ifeoma's care and sacrifice, the fever passed. But something within him had shifted. His resolve hardened, his heart solemn. It was time. Time to remove the mask, to lift the veil, and let the truth echo through the marble walls of the house he once called home. He had seen enough. On a Saturday morning, under the clear Harmattan skies, a curious invitation made its way to each member of the Durojaye household. A formal letter, printed on fine stationery, bearing the crest of Durotech International. "You are cordially invited to an emergency family meeting at the Durojaye Estate Hall, 5 p.m. sharp. Attendance is mandatory." Puzzled, Amara assumed it was from one of Durojaye's lawyers. Perhaps there was some leftover property still to be claimed. She dressed in her finest lace and gold jewelry, determined to fight for whatever scraps were left. Tunde and Kemi followed, each arriving with expectation and entitlement painted on their faces. Only Ifeoma hesitated. "I received this too," she told Baba Kunle quietly. "But I'm just a maid. Why would they invite me?" Baba Kunle smiled for the first time in months. "Because the time for truth has come." At precisely 5 o'clock, the family gathered in the grand estate hall. A long mahogany table stretched beneath a chandelier of crystals. At the head sat an empty chair, where Durojaye once presided over Sunday brunches and business meetings, but today that seat remained vacant. Amara checked her watch. What is the meaning of this? Suddenly, the rear doors creaked open, and Baba Kunle walked in, not in rags, not in his custodian's uniform, but in full regal attire, a richly woven agbada, beaded necklace, cap tilted with grace. His beard was groomed, his eyes sharp, his presence unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the room. Kemi dropped her phone. Tunde stood frozen. Amara's face drained of color. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." Baba Kunle took his seat at the head of the table and looked at them one by one. "It's me," he said simply. "The man you ignored, the man you mocked, the man who tested your love." There was silence, then chaos. "Dad, Baba, I didn't know," Kemi stammered. You faked it? The bankruptcy? Everything?" Tunde said, eyes wide. "Yes," Durojaye replied. "Every Naira is intact. The companies are thriving. This entire test was to reveal the truth, and you all failed. Spectacularly," Amara found her voice. "How could you deceive us like this?" "How could I?" Durojaye's voice was thunder now. "How could you watch a man grow ill at your doorstep and do nothing? How could you treat a stranger with such contempt in the house that feeds you?" He turned to Ifeoma, who stood quietly at the back of the room. But not everyone failed. He rose and walked over to her. "Ifeoma," he said, "you are the only light I found in the darkness. You treated me with dignity when I had nothing to offer. For that, I am forever grateful." He opened a leather folder and handed her a document. This is a deed to a 5-bedroom house in Lekki, in your name. And this," he handed her another paper, "is a full scholarship for your brother. University, housing, everything." Ifeoma trembled, tears brimming in her eyes. "Chief, I don't know what to say." "Say nothing, my child. Your actions already spoke louder than words ever could." He turned back to his family. "I have rewritten my will. Majority of my estate will now go to charities across Nigeria, and a trust has been set up under Ifeoma's name to manage scholarships for orphans." Kemi began crying. Tunde cursed under his breath. Amara looked ready to faint. "You disrespected everything I worked for," Durojaye said, his voice calm but final. "But worse, you showed no humanity. You don't deserve this legacy. Not until you understand what legacy truly means." He paused. "You're still my blood. I will not throw you into the street, but you will work. You will learn humility, and you will no longer live in this mansion as royalty." Amara stepped forward, her voice trembling. "So, you're choosing a maid over your family?" "No," he said. "I am choosing character over comfort, truth over appearances, heart over heritage." In the weeks that followed, Ifeoma moved into her new home. Her brother began classes at the university. Durojaye reinstated himself as chairman of Durotech, but with a lighter schedule, choosing instead to spend more time mentoring youths and supporting community projects. Tunde was sent to work in the warehouse. Kemi began interning at a local NGO. Amara left. Not with grace, but in fury. She filed for divorce and moved abroad, hoping to find sympathy. But she found none, and as the days rolled on, the once cold mansion began to warm again. Not with gold or chandeliers, but with truth. The echoes of betrayal began to fade, replaced by the gentle rhythm of redemption. Durojaye's mansion no longer rang with the hollow laughter of false affection, but with the soft, steady hum of healing. Though the scars of disappointment ran deep, Chief Durojaye had made peace with his past. The mask of Baba Kunle was laid to rest, but the lessons learned while wearing it would guide his remaining days. At first, Tunde resisted the warehouse. Used to boardrooms and tailored suits, the smell of motor oil and the weight of crates offended him. But day by day, he grew stronger, not just in muscle but in mind. He saw how the workers greeted each other with brotherhood. He learned how to repair engines, drive forklifts, and fill orders with care. And for the first time in his life, Tunde saw his father not as an obstacle to power, but as a man who had carried this entire world on his shoulders. One evening, he visited his father's study, unannounced and unsure. "I just wanted to say, I was wrong, Dad," he murmured. "About everything." Durojaye looked up from his journal. "Are you ready to build something of your own, my son? Without shortcuts?" Tunde nodded. "Yes, sir. I want to earn it. The right way." A silent smile passed between them, one that spoke of forgiveness and the first seed of legacy truly planted. Kemi's fall was harder. From influencer parties to serving in soup kitchens, from luxury spas to community outreach, her new role at the NGO was uncomfortable at first. But it was there she met Zainab, a 10-year-old girl with burns on her legs and no family. Kemi took Zainab under her wing, helping her with school, visiting her at the clinic, and listening to her stories. In doing so, she began to heal her own broken identity. One night, she wrote her father a letter. "Daddy, I now understand what you meant about real beauty. It's in the hands that help, not the wrists that glitter. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. With love, Kemi." Amara's path was different. Her pride was her crown, and she would rather wear it in loneliness than lay it down in humility. She moved to London, hoping for support from her social circle. But word had spread. No sympathy came. Her divorce was finalized quietly. Durojaye sent her a settlement far more generous than required. She responded with a single note. "You are a better man than I ever deserved." Amara. As Ifeoma settled into her new life, she never let go of her roots. Her brother flourished in school, and she began training other young women from disadvantaged backgrounds in skills: catering, sewing, bookkeeping. She started a foundation with Durojaye's support, the Kunle Foundation, named after the disguise that changed their lives. Its mission? To teach dignity through humility and compassion. She remained close to Durojaye, not as a servant, but as a friend. He entrusted her with managing part of the Durojaye legacy, his most personal foundation of all. One day, during a radio interview, she was asked, "What made you help a man you didn't know when everyone else turned away?" Her answer was, "Simple. Because I saw a man in pain, not a man in rags. And I believed everyone deserves kindness, no matter how they look." Years passed. Durojaye, now older and grayer, stood before a graduating class of scholars funded by his foundation. The audience listened, quiet and wide-eyed, as he told them the story, his story. "I once wore silk robes and thought I was powerful. Then I wore rags and found my true strength. You see, wealth doesn't expose character, poverty does, and love. Real love sees through the layers." He paused. "And if you ever become wealthy, good. But never forget to test your heart often, because the heart can lie louder than gold." And so, the tale of the billionaire who disguised himself as a poor man became a parable whispered across towns and cities. Not just a tale of betrayal and disguise, but a living African folktale of truth, humility, and the redemptive power of compassion. If you watched this far, ask yourself this: would you pass the test if love had no price tag? This is not just a story. It is a mirror. Look closely. What would you see? Thanks for watching. Under the golden African sun, our tale comes to a close. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate the rich tapestry of African heritage. The drumbeat of another adventure awaits. Until next time, stay happy. Goodbye.